Good afternoon, everyone. I can see we have early birds. Welcome, everyone. Please go to the chat box and drop there. Tell us your location. Tell us where you're joining from. Thank you. We are still waiting for more people to join before we commence the session. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to PAC Trustees webinar session. My name is Ibukunoluwa Adekoya, and I will be your lead moderator for this session. With me is Mary Shomori, who will be the co-moderator for this session. Mary Shomori, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Shomori. I'll be your co-moderator for today's session. Please feel free to share your thoughts and questions in the comment section. Kindly turn off your mic throughout the session as well. Let's make this an interactive one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Shomori, for that short and beautiful introduction of yourself. I can see lots of people are joining already, but we need to give extra 5 minutes for more people to join. If it goes to the chat box now, I can see a lot of people joining, and I can see people from Lagos, Nigeria. I can see Patrick from Manchester, United Kingdom. Welcome, everyone. Please keep dropping your location while we wait more minutes for other people to join. They will commence the session. I can also see Mr. Femi Elusomi from New Zealand. Welcome, sir. We have up to 25 people right now. Please, we need you to drop your location in the comment section. Welcome, Michael from Ogun State. Thank you for joining. We have 2 more minutes to commence the session. I think we have enough people to start this session. So good afternoon once again, everyone. Welcome to PAC Trustees webinar session. My name is Ibukunoluwa Adekoya, and I'll be the lead moderator for this session. With me is Mary Shomori, who will be the co-moderator for this session. Mary Shomori, you have the floor once again.
Thank you, Bukunoluwa, for that. Good afternoon, everyone, once again. My name is Mary Shomori, and I'll be your co-moderator for this session. Once again, please feel free to share your thoughts and kindly drop your questions in the comment section. Please turn off your mic and video as well throughout this session. Let's make this an interactive one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for that short and beautiful introduction of yourself. We are delighted to welcome you all to this session as we dive into the discussion on corporate trustees' role in the management and protection of trust assets and investment. It is very important for us to make you understand why we chose this topic. Most people don't know what trustees actually do, and they don't know who trustees are. But this session will be enlightening everyone as to what role we play in the industry and what we do. Secondly, if you look at the number of people on this call, I can boldly say 95% of us have investment in one investment company or the other. And some of us even make use of investment apps for our investment. And most of the concerns that come to, most of the concerns we have when we invest is safety of the funds, even the accessibility as to when we need the fund, is it possible for us to access it? And again, one important thing we often bother ourselves about is what is the probability that our beneficiaries will be able to access the funds when we are no longer around. So this session will be providing a lot of answers to the concerns we have, and we'll be talking about who trustees are. We have brought to you a group of experts with years of experience in the trust industry and the management of trust assets, as well as the capital market, to shed light to what trustees do, to what roles they play in the management and protection of trust assets and investment, as well to also enlighten you as to how you can create layers of protection to your assets. So right now, moving forward to the agenda of the day, I would be inviting the Managing Director of PAC Trustees Limited to give us a welcome speech. But before I go ahead to do that, I would like to run everybody through who we are in PAC Trustees and what we do.
Our lives are filled with many defining moments, from birth to our first steps to our first friend, and sometimes something as sad as losing a loved one. I remember when we lost our dad, our family breadwinner. Mummy tried but could not afford to feed and send all 4 of us to school by herself. But just as we were running out of hope, someone from PAC Trustees called to tell us that Daddy had left some money in a PAC Trustees Educational Trust to cover our fees. Daddy, my hero. Of course, I made the most out of it and graduated with flying colours. Then I moved abroad to further my studies and work. Life was good in the UK, and I decided to send money back home to my cousin Chooks to help build Mum a house. But he ran away with the money. So how did I build the house? Well, with the help of PAC Trustees Diaspora Trust, I was able to monitor the purchasing of the land and build it without any hassle. This is me, Adora Eunice Obi, and I am building Africa's largest technology solution for virtual exhibitions. Building a dream can be hard, but with PAC Trustees Corporate Trust, I have access to sufficient capital from different lenders just by using our house as security. Life is defined by key moments. I have had no regrets in trusting my key moments to PAC Trustees Limited.
PAC Trustees, a subsidiary of the PAC Holding Group, is committed to providing exceptional corporate trust services. We specialize in trust for bond and debenture, as well as government and supranational bonds, ensuring that your assets are managed and protected for the long term. At PAC, we understand that success is important, but legacy is what truly matters. Let us help you build a lasting legacy for generations to come.
Welcome back from that short break. I believe we all enjoyed the video, and I believe that we've been able to pick 1 or 2 things we do in PAC Trustees. So without wasting much of our time, join me to welcome the Managing Director of PAC Trustees in person of Mr. Yinka Adebola to give us a welcome speech. Mr. Yinka, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and Mary Shumari, the lead moderator for this event, and the co-moderator. I also want to thank our dear audience for joining us on time. I recognize the presence of our partners in the diaspora, especially Mr. Engineer Patrick Obidoye and the rest. Thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us promptly in this occasion. Like the multimedia spoke to,
thank you, sir.
PAC Trustees is the only subsidiary of Pan-African Capital Holdings Limited, a proprietary investment company with special focus in key sectors of emerging and frontier markets in Africa. The areas of our focus include financial services, hospitality, entertainment, real estate, and infrastructure. At PAC Trustees, we specialize in the management of trust assets, both in the area of corporate trust, public trust, and private trust. Specifically in the area of corporate trust, what do we do there? We try to manage assets to secure borrowings from multiple financial institutions. Specifically, we hold the assets in trust for the lending institutions. And in the area of private trust, we try to help you to set up your will and trust. As we all know, will is testamentary, while trust is a living instrument. So, I mean, if you have assets, we can help you to create either a trust or set up a will of the assets for the benefit of your named beneficiaries and the rest. And then the question is, why are we putting this session together? And by the way, it's going to be in series. Why are we putting this session together? Essentially, it's for us to enlighten ourselves on what the role of corporate trust in the management of trust assets. What are trust assets? Movable and immovable assets. Properties, your funds in banks, and the rest. Lately we have digital assets. The session will take us through what our rules are. How do we set up a trust over some of these assets? Most of us, we often face with challenge such that we have assets in bank, or we have funds in bank, and the owner of the funds suddenly die, either without a will. Some even dies with a will. But there are a lot of complex surrounding the process of what are the rules of corporate trust in the management of this trust asset. And why do you have to set up a trust? You need to set up a trust in order for you to ensure that your assets are taken care of. And the only way you can do that, I know the group of them will be able to do justice to this topic. So once again, we want to welcome each and every one of us to this session. Please feel free to interact and to ask questions. And it is our hope that after these sessions, we have known a few things surrounding trust, assets, and the management of those assets. And then the need for you to set up a trust while you are still alive before it is too late. So sit back, relax, and then enjoy the session. And it's our hope that between now and the end of the year, we'll be able to put another session together so that the continued education or enlightening of the public as to the role of corporate trustees will be achieved through this medium. Once again, thank you, and sit back, enjoy yourself, and feel free to ask questions when the need arises. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adegbola, for that warm and insightful welcome. You have actually set the perfect tone for today's discussion. And moving on to the next agenda of the day is the introduction of our guest speakers. And I will be handing over to Mary Shomori to handle that. Over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Bokoloa. And as to our panelists for today, we have three experienced speakers for today's session, and our first panelist, who is Mrs. Adenike Olatokunbo Ajayi, who was a former executive director in United Capital and who served a dual role in special counsel to the managing member and chief operation officer for Diligence Offshore Services. Fortunately, she'll be represented by Mrs. Olatunde Adenike Komolafe, who has had 10 years in commercial banking and 9 years in investment banking. She functioned in fund compliance, fund management, and treasury. She currently runs her own business as an entrepreneur. And today, she'll be sharing with us how trustees function in corporate trust and a lot more. Our second panelist for today, a man who currently specializes in corporate law advisory, estate planning and arbitration. He is also the managing partner of Damon's Legal Practitioner, who is in person of Mr. Shino Balogun. And our final panelist for the day, our very own Mr. Abimbola Ibrahim, who is an accomplished professional serving as the head of business development at PAC Trustees, with a robust career spanning over 15 years across diverse financial and non-financial institutions. He has earned expertise in asset management, trusteeship, commercial banking, insurance, and a lot more. Please let us welcome our panelists for today. Thank you, everyone. Ibukola, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mary Shumori, for that beautiful introduction of our speakers. Now we have come to the most sensitive part of this session. And without wasting time, I would like all the speakers to tell us in 2 to 3 minutes, in order in which they were introduced, to tell us what they understand by asset protection. We'll be starting with Mrs. Olatunde. Mrs. Olatunde, you have the floor. Okay, while we wait for Mrs. Ola today, Mr. Adeshino, can you tell us in 2 to 3 minutes what you understand by asset protection?
Yeah.
Mr. Adeshino, are you there?
Thank you. Yeah, I can you hear me?
Okay, please turn on your video so everyone can see you.
Okay. Can you hear me? And can you see me?
Very clearly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ibukun, for the invite, and thank you to PAC Trustees. The question is on my understanding of asset protection. And I would safely say that asset protection is a component of financial planning, which seeks to seeks to assist individuals in safeguarding their assets.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
I think there's a disruption.
Mr. Patrick, please mute yourself. Mr. Balogun, please, you can continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, like I was saying, it's a component of financial planning, which seeks to protect one asset from potential risk and liability. By saying that, it doesn't mean that such protection is limited to individuals. So the protection can be for individuals and it can also be for corporates. So corporates can use these tools to protect their assets, from potential risk or liability. Likewise, individuals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Adeshino. That was a very insightful response. And I think our audience should have their notepads right now and their pen, because we've been learning a lot from this session. Okay, on to the next speaker. Please, can we hear from you, Mr. Abimbola Ibrahim?
Yeah, thank you, moderator. Yeah, yes, protecting your asset, it either be for individual or corporate entity. When you look at individual, you are talking about how you are actually build an endurance legacy as to maybe if somebody is not longer alive, how would my assets are actually distributed among my wife, children, and the likes. There is this adage that actually says that who rests in peace is somebody that actually died and there's no dispute after that person's demise. So you actually protect your assets so that you don't go into the wrong hands, maybe after demise in terms of the private individual. Then when you talk about the corporate entity, you are looking at maybe, for instance, you have a corporate trustee as your trustee for transactions. We talk about venture security, whereby a trustee actually holds trust your asset on your behalf, so that you could be able to have access to those, syndicated facility for one or two banks that will be able to finance your, asset. So typically, those are the ways that you can actually protect your asset.
Thank you, Mr. Abimbola, for that incredible one. On to Mrs. Olatunde once again. Mrs. Olatunde, are you back on the call?
Yes, had network glitches earlier on. Thank you so much, Ibukoluwa.
Welcome, ma. Please, can you tell us in 2 to 3 minutes what you understand by asset protection?
Okay, so basically, it's all about certain legality structures around a particular asset or a group of assets, to shield those assets from foreseen or unforeseen eventualities. It could be liabilities arising from a court judgment. It could be creditors laying claim on those assets. On a lighter note, it could even be, safeguarding it from your own personal excesses. So you put those structures in place to ensure that those assets are utilized for the purpose for which it was originally set aside for. Yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Olatunde. That was an incredible one. As we can all see, you can tell our speakers are ready. They are 100% ready for us. They're ready to share from their wealth of experience with every one of us here on this call, this moment. And our next question will go to Mrs. Olatunde. Can you tell us how trustees play their role in protecting assets? I know one or two of the speakers actually mentioned few things, but I would like you to shed more light into how trustees play their role in protecting assets. Mrs. Olatunde, that question goes to you. Okay, I think we lost her again.
Sorry, was that for me?
Yes, ma, that question is for you, Mrs. Olatunde. We want you to tell us how trustees play their role in protecting assets.
All right, so asset protection for individuals and corporates as well. Now, in the first, once a trust is created, the assets are in the custody of the trust. Third parties, trustees, of course, go ahead to draft a trust deed that generally guides the operation, the management of that particular trust fund. So, for example, there's an individual, he wants to secure his children's education, over a period of time. So he approaches the trustees, they create that trust, they create an educational trust fund, for the client, and in conjunction with the client, the trust deed is prepared with the input of the client noted in the trust deed. And funds come in, and the trustees have the responsibility of administering the fund, in line with the requirements or the dictates of the trust deed. And then for bond transactions, for example, subnationals now, the state government bonds, the trustee comes into that transaction with the responsibility of ensuring, that the assets are protected. Now, a sinking fund account is created, and to ensure that bondholders, get their coupon and principal repayments as at when due. So by opening a sinking fund account, ensuring ISPOs are secured, payments come into the accounts on a regular basis, those accounts, the assets, are shielded and protected, on behalf of the bondholders, and that cuts across the different corporate trust services that we have in the trustees business.
Thank you, Mrs. Olatunde. That's quite interesting. It is obvious trustees play a lot of protection role in the individual space, private space, I mean the corporate space and the public space. Please, can you tell us specifically how trustees play their role in mutual funds, ensuring that they safeguard the interest of the unit holders in mutual funds that are being managed and held by the fund managers? Mrs. Olatunde, that question is still for you.
Okay, so mutual funds are a kind of collective investment scheme, and it basically entails a number of people, pulling funds together, for the purpose of investment, for the purpose of receiving returns on investments. And when you have a number of people coming together, putting their funds in the hand of a singular person, it becomes very necessary to ensure that the interest of the unit holders are protected. So the trustees come in to play their role in, first of all, drafting the trust deed. They are responsible for drafting the trust deed, and in drafting the trust deed, they ensure, that all the clauses that provides for the protection of the interest of the unit holder, is clearly and unambiguously stated in the trust deed. Of course, they are also the custodian of the trust deed. They ensure that the trust deed, the asset manager, complies, with all of the requirements, all the guidelines in the trust deed. Now, moving forward, the responsibility of the trustee is also to ensure that they sit on the investment committee, of the asset manager, and in so doing, they are there to protect the interest of the unit holders. They ensure investment decisions basically are in line with the provisions, of the trustee. So the trustee is a vital part of the decision making, investment decision making, of the asset manager, because you have sometimes, asset managers, they're focused on increasing the value of the fund. They're focused on securing maximum returns, for their clients, for the unit holders. So then sometimes they might overlook some risk items, risk criteria, that they should avoid. So the trustee is there basically to ensure that the act is what they're supposed to do. In the trust deed for a mutual fund, for example, it states clearly, a money market fund, for example, it states clearly the asset classes that an asset manager should or is allowed to invest in. And beyond that, it also states the range, this percentage range, that each of these asset classes can comprise of out of the total portfolio. So the trustee is there to ensure, that the asset manager also abides or keeps to all of what is stated, or all the guidelines in the trust deed. Now, the trustee also looks out for the unit holder by ensuring that they render returns. The asset manager is expected to render returns regularly to the Securities and Exchange Commission. They have their monthly returns, they have their quarterly returns, they have their annual returns. They are monitoring the funds and ensuring that the funds are being managed as they ought to be managed. So the trustee ensures that this is done. The trustee monitors the payments, ensures payments are made to the unit holder as at when due. Now, the assets of the ensures it's in the custody of the approved custodian, the SEC approved custodian. So the funds are not in the custody of the asset manager, as it were. It's in the custody. They ensure it's in the custody of the custodian to the fund, to protect the interests of the unit holders. And in all of these regulatory roles that the trustee plays, it confirms, that all the assets are with the custodians by obtaining an asset schedule from the custodian, obtaining the asset schedule from the asset manager, and ensuring that they are, they tally. They tally. They also monitor the register of the unit holders with the registrars, and ensure that, the number of unit holders with the registrars tally, with what the asset managers have in their records. In the course of the month, you might have some unit holders that have either exited the fund or new entrants, into the fund. So all of that is monitored, and the trustee, also to the trustee, any breach whatsoever to the trustee is reported to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and all of this is done to ensure, that investor confidence, is sustained in the market. That is very, very critical to the capital market. Investors' confidence is very, very critical. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Olatunde. That was quite insightful. And as we can see, we have lots of roles trustees play in ensuring that the unit holders' interests are protected, coming to keeping a check on the fund managers, and even ensuring that the registrars have the right details for the unit holders. Okay, so right now, I believe some of our audiences actually have questions already. Please, you can start dropping your questions in the comment section. So I will be handing over to Mary Shomori to continue with the discussion. Mary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Bukola, for that. And to Mrs. Komalafe Olatunde. Our next question goes to Mr. Shino Balogun. Mr. Shino Balogun, please, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mary. Good
Oh,
afternoon.
that's very good. Thank you. So our first question is, can you please enlighten us on ways trust arrangements can help mitigate risk for individuals and companies? And you might as well state scenarios in each case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just as it's been said at the introduction, asset protection, trust and all of that arrangement, one of the very important role of trust, it protects individuals. So for instance, let me be practical. For instance, you have an asset and you want to move the assets into a trust. And that means that once it goes into a trust, particularly an irrevocable trust, that asset legally no longer belongs to you. So anybody who wants to lay claims to probably out of, damages from a suit in court or anything will not legally see that asset because it no longer belongs to you. But while you've moved the asset to the trustee, the trust deed which you would execute with that trustee will state the purpose for which the trustee would, or how the trustee should manage the assets and who the beneficiary, of the assets could be. It could be an income generating asset, and you can still earn income from that asset while it's being managed by the trustee, and also your beneficiaries can also, enjoy benefit from that same asset. So one of, the benefits here is that that asset legally is no longer in your name. So you are protected against the risk of claims or liabilities, that could come to you. I remember saying this recently, that under our laws, when it comes to execution of monetary judgments, or maybe you want to levy execution on judgment, what our laws only exempt is your pot and your bed. Every other thing you own, movable or immovable, becomes attachable. You understand? So where you have liabilities like that and people want to levy execution, so long as you've moved it into a trust and it no longer, bears your name or identity, you are fully protected, in that regard. So for you as an individual who has taken the initiative to set up a trust earlier, and such a situation occur in future, you are confident that you are well protected because those assets may not, in most cases, be attached to for claims against you in that instance. So I believe that covers that. And also for corporate entities, it's also very possible where entities own assets in trust and not their names. You know, under the laws of, under our laws where, you know, companies run into bankruptcy, where liquidation of assets, you know, come in, those assets that have been shielded, you know, in trust will be, you know, exempted one way or the other. So my best advice is, you know, as professionals, it's important that we seek professional advice, you know, in engaging trust professionals who would look at the nitty-gritty of, you know, your circumstance and then advise you on the best way or the best tool, you know, to protect this asset. So it's available for both individuals. It's also available for corporates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shino, for that insightful answer. And once again, would you also tell us, how does trust minimizes taxes and probate costs? I mean, you'd also let us know that probate costs are issues that are faced by both individuals and companies. So please, can you tell us how trust minimizes taxes and probate costs? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. Let me start by saying that, or creating a scenario. Okay, so the process in our country, based on our law, is that if a person dies intestate, you know, that is without a will, the cadre of people who are you're allowed to apply for administration can approach the probate court or the probate registry and apply for letters of administration. Where a person dies testate, meaning that he has a will, the administrators that are named in that will can approach the probate court or the probate registry to apply, you know, for probate. However, you know, the process is cumbersome. First, if there is a will, you have to apply to the court, and then first of all, they have to read the will. After reading the will, every other person knows, okay, who gets what from the will. That is the first stage. After that, you then need to do formal application to the court for grant of probate. In that instance, they would need to gather the assets. They would need to do evaluation of the assets, and they would charge an estate tax. In Lagos State, it's 10%. So say, for instance, the assets in the estate is about 10 billion. That means that 10% of that will be paid by the administrators, or in this case, you know, the executors of the will, to government as estate tax. So one of the ways trust would help to save this cost is that while the individual is alive, he has already created a trust over that asset. That asset legally no longer belongs to him. It now belongs to the trustees. He can give instructions as to who gets what over his assets. Those instructions need not go to the probate, you understand, before the trustee can fulfill that obligation. So if the trustees have an instruction that upon death, transfer my house in Magodo to my daughter A, transfer my house in Banana Island to my son B, transfer this asset to son D, the trustee need not go to the probate section to do that. And then the estate tax, which would ordinarily have been attached to you applying through the probate, would have been, you know, extinguished, because nobody would pay the trustee, you know, such tax, you understand? So that way, while you are still alive, creating that trust helps you, you know, to extinguish completely, you know, whatever it is, that cost that you would have paid to government. And mind you, you would not ordinarily walk to the probate registry. You would also, you know, employ the service of professionals, you know, to help you do that. A lawyer would charge his fees for doing that. All of those costs would be saved if, you know, you have a trust arrangement already set up. And also with respect to taxes, you know, ideally, under our laws, individuals are taxed based on their income, while companies are taxed based on their profits. So if there is 10 million in profits, that is what the tax will be based on for an individual and, sorry, for a corporate entity. And if there's 10 million in income, that is also what, you know, the tax will be based on. By employing tools of, you know, estate planning, estate management, one can legally, because, you know, under our laws, tax avoidance is not illegal. However, tax evasion is illegal because the trustees, you know, work with professionals, tax experts, and all of that. They can clearly, you know, advise you on ways where you can restructure your assets. You can redistribute, you know, assets. You can manage them in ways where your tax liabilities to government will greatly, you know, be reduced. I hope I've been able to answer that question.
Oh, yes, Mr. Shina Balogun. Thank you so much for that detailed explanation of tax and probate costs and how trustees, or how beautiful it would be for individuals and companies to set up trusts in order to avoid all these cumbersome and long process in getting their wills, in getting their trust asset distributed to their beneficiary. Moving on, we would invite Mr. Abimbola Ibrahim for the next question. Mr. Abimbola Ibrahim, please, can you hear me?
Yes, Mary, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very good. So, can you tell us what are the different trust vehicles individuals and companies can use to secure their assets?
Yes, thank you, Mary. Yes, for individual, the vehicle to use for securing the asset, you know, of course, you can use will, you can use living trust. So by will is just a kind of declaration of legal declarations, whereby the person is actually give instruction as to where, his asset will actually distribute after his or her demise. So of course, you are trying to protect your asset, your name, and secure the future for your name beneficiary, so that there won't be a kind of your asset is being wrongly distributed for create a sort of acrimony within the family. People that does not even know how you work, when you are alive, they want to benefit and create problem for the family. So of course, with that, you already secure that asset for the purpose of your name beneficiary, maybe your children, your wife, whoever that the settlor are interested, name in those will. Then also you talk about a living trust, like the other speaker has already said, panelists have said, Mr. Shino, you know, living trust is when you have an arrangement with your trustee that while you are alive, you entrust your asset to trustee to manage it on your behalf. So for a purpose of a named beneficiary, yes, of course, you have a lot of property, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Lagos, and the likes. So, and you just see that this will be a kind of additional body. Let me just try and entrust part of this asset to corporate trustee, like PAC trustee, to manage it on my behalf. Then, of course, you're already, by stating the name beneficiary of those assets, you already secure that asset for those name beneficiaries, because nobody knows the actual time that appointed time will actually arises. So that's the essence of a living trust. Of course, under the living trust, we have all other trusts that you can even use as a vehicle to secure your asset. When you talk of educational trust, you secure a trust, you secure the educational trust. You secure the education, you secure the future of your what? Your children, create an enduring legacy for those children. Yes. Then also diaspora trust. Diaspora trust, of course, it can be as a vehicle to secure an asset. Say, for instance, some of our listeners here, participate here in this webinar. Some of them are in abroad. And of course, I think one of the major experiences is the issue of defraud. Yes, of course, back home. So of course, you can use the trust vehicle like a living trust, whereby You are in diaspora, you live in Canada, you live in New Zealand, you live in UK, you live in America. You have fear of maybe invested back home in Nigeria. So because of the experience whereby some people just, sending a dummy pictures for you where you are sending money home to actually, get an asset back home or invest in a particular investment in Nigeria. So those kind of issues are actually minimized or eradicated by being, take or signing of the diaspora trust. So that's the area for, private trust, individual to secure your asset. So coming to corporate trust, so vehicle to use to secure the asset, you are looking at a corporate trust, like maybe you have a debenture security arrangement with trustee, whereby you have a kind of, you don't constrain, you don't have a limited, you have a flexibility of where you can actually have financing with, being financed by 2 or 3 financial institutions, to finance your assets. So of course, in order to have a flexibility and, have more, add more financial to finance your maybe project or maybe for expansion, you just engage the corporate trust service by ensuring that they hold your asset in trust for you. So instead of constraining yourself to, you have 5 billion worth of assets, you are securing for 1 billion assets in one bank, and your payment period is 2 years. You are already limited your times, yourself to, the company limited itself to only particular bank. But in a situation whereby you have a debenture security trust, where your trustee is actually holding your asset on behalf, of course, you could be able to have that asset of 5 billion to secure further, investment and financing for additional 2 or 3 banks to the tune of your obligation to the title of the asset you have. Yes, of course. Also, SPV, special purpose vehicle, can also use to secure your asset in terms of corporate trust. Thank you.
Wow, that's a lot we've learned, and I'm sure our audience has taken key notes of their questions and other inquiries. Based on what Mr. Ibrahim just said right now, there are lots of different trust vehicles both individuals and companies can create to secure their assets. Mr. Ibrahim, would you say it's beneficial to set up trusts for companies and individuals?
Yes, in fact, that's why we are here today, just to sensitize the public of most of the beneficiary, in terms of opportunity, benefit that both individual and corporate organizations are actually derived in engaging corporate trustee like PAC trustee. Take, for instance, when you come to issue of will, between you and me, we even have a lot of issues. We have issues around people being, litigations, dispute within the family. Even not lately, it's not even only maybe an extended family, even within the same motherly, siblings. We've had experience whereby people, after the demise of their parent, there's a lot of litigation as to distributions of the asset of the parent. But for you to actually engage PAC trustee to draft your will, which is even, as small as 50,000 naira for flex will product for PAC trustee, you actually, safeguard any kind of dispute that might arise that will drag the name of the family into the mud. So, of course, in terms of reputational risk for the family, you are swayed that, right? Then in terms of time and cost savings, of course, when the other speaker was speaking, he talked about the cost of probate and the likes. He talked about the time, So all these are benefits to an individual in terms of maybe you have a will, in terms of will, Then in terms of living trust, of course, like Warren Buffett has rightly said, he said you can only think outside the box when you are alive, but you cannot think outside the box when you are no longer more. So of course, because he has already taken, opportunity of that trust by ensure that while he's still alive, he entrusts his own stock to 3 of his children. Of course, those are the benefits, of course, because you already create a kind of generational wealth, for your beneficiary, maybe children or wife or whatever. So typically for individual, you are saving time of which you can just, file to probate, get a letter of administration where, somebody died in testings. You will save those times, that you will have just, get before you can be able to be beneficiary, be able to have access to those assets. So also in terms of continuity, perpetuity, of course, continuity, confidentiality, of course, is also beneficial, in terms of, okay, you are dealing with corporate trust. Of course, in terms of confidentiality, the trustee will ensure that they protect your whatever information you are given. That is why, of course, your will is being actually kept in a safe custody. You understand? So that's about the individual. But for the corporate, yes, of course, I said it earlier that a company that actually engage in debenture security trust, you of course have a kind of opportunity, to engage or seeking financial from different banks at the same time when you are seeking for syndicated loan or syndicated financing. So that's as that with the corporate entity. And at the same time, there is flexibility, of course, and also to ensure that you are able to actually, there is this confidentiality for the investors, for the financier to actually want to come in the moment you have a trust arrangement, in your when you are seeking a facility for the bank and you have a kind of debenture security. Thank you.
Oh, that's a lot of benefits. It's for individuals and companies to set up their trust. Thank you, Mr. Abimbola Ibrahim. And to our audience, I'm really sure that you have your questions written down in the chat box. And also, in case you have more clarification, don't forget, you can only think outside the box when you're alive and not when you're dead. It's more beneficial if you set up your trust in order to secure a generational wealth for your companies, for your families, and also for your future. Thank you. Moving over to you, Ibukunlua.
Thank you, Mary Shumori. That was an excellent one. So we have come to the last round of questions, and the next question goes to Mrs. Olatunde. Mrs. Olatunde, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma. So we'd like you to briefly tell us the roles of trustees in corporate trust, especially when companies are seeking facilities from bank. How do we come to play in this bank lending?
All right, thank you, Olua. Before I delve into that, I want to quickly address a question that we have in the chat box regarding what I spoke about earlier on. Someone is asking a question regarding the funds being in the custody of the custodian rather than with the fund manager. So yes, before now, the asset managers were in custody of the assets to mutual funds, the cash, the fixed deposits, all the investments, basically all the assets, were in the custody of the asset manager. But over time, it was observed that there was a commingling, of proprietary funds with the assets of the mutual fund. And that's created an issue, created a problem, and the Securities and Exchange Commission needed to deal with that to protect, unit holders with their investments. So the laws were changed, the rules were changed And asset managers were mandated to transfer all assets, to custodians. And the trustees, around that period of time, the trustees were vested with the responsibility of ensuring, that all of those assets were actually transferred. A custodian was appointed, SEC-approved custodian appointed for each of the funds, and the trustees were vested with the responsibility of ensuring that all the assets were transferred to the custodian. So all the asset managers do really, aside from making the investment decisions and all of that, is to send instructions to the custodian. They want to invest funds, they send an instruction to the custodian who executes the instruction. They want to liquidate funds, they want to pay out a unit holder. They simply send instructions to the custodian who executes the instruction that has been sent, of course, with the approval of the trustees. So I want to believe that answers your question. All right then. So moving on to the question at hand: what role do trustees play in corporate trusts, specifically when you have lending loan arrangements between a borrower and more than one lender? Okay, so right from the onset, the trustees are involved. They are involved. So they are responsible for drafting the security trust deed, and the trustees act as a repository, so to speak, a repository of all the documents pertaining to that transaction. So the title documents to the securities, the insurance policies, whatever MOUs, that they have signed, all the documents pertaining to that transaction is in the custody of the trustees. Now, the trustees are also responsible for ensuring that they carry out a search, on the assets that has been put down as security for the loans. Abimbola has already explained what syndicated loans is all about. You have a borrower and several lenders, several banks lending money to a particular company. So the trustee ensures they carry out a search report. They visit, that asset. If it's a physical, non-movable asset, the trustees ensure a visitation is carried out to confirm, that asset is there, and then they carry out a search report where it has to do with properties, and they also arrange all the documentation, the legalities around perfecting the documents, perfecting the title. And when you have maybe new entrants into the loan arrangements, another bank coming into the arrangements, they arrange the stamping of the title to ensure the interest of the new entrant is registered, on that title. So they handle all of that. The trustee also acts as a mediator, so to speak. When you have a transaction between more than 2-3 people, the tendency is there to have some misunderstandings, some arguments, and all of that. So the trustee is there really, to mediate, between the two parties, the borrower and the numerous lender. So the trustee is a mediator in the midst of that particular transaction. So they protect the interest of the borrower, and also, with the presence of the trustee, it's not so easy for one of the lender to initiate a foreclosure without the knowledge of other lenders in the transaction. So it provides, the presence of the trustee provides a high level of comfort, trust for all the parties in the transaction. So the role of the trustee really cannot be overemphasized in a trust arrangement, cannot be overemphasized. So in a nutshell, those are the major things, the things that the roles of the trustee in a corporate trust arrangement.
Thank you, Mrs. Olatide. That's quite an insightful one. That's a whole lot of role trustees play in bank lending. And I believe
A lot of administrative
yes,
work.
and we can't even say everything in this session, which means that there will be other sessions where we talk more on corporate trust and the role of trustees. So right now, I would like to proceed to the very last question, and that is more like an advice to everyone watching. But before I go ahead to ask the last question, I believe we've been noting our questions, and I want us to start dropping our question in the chat box because we are moving ahead to the Q&A session after we are done with the discussion. So, Mr. Abimbola and Mr. Additional, can you tell the audience more like an advice? What would you say to them as to how to create an extra layer of protection around their assets? This is just, this should be just like a minute, just an advice to the audience. We'll start with Mr. Additional.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Ibuku. I would say in a sentence that it's good to have, the thought, to protect your assets, but also it's also very important to seek professional advice. I would say that there's no one size fits all, an aspect of protection. You need to seek advice. You guys are professional trustees, you are corporate trustees. They can work to, trustees. They are professionals. They work with other professionals so that, the circumstance of, their assets can be discussed, the objective of the protection can be discussed, and the best advice can be given. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Additional. Now I would like to hear from Mr. Abimbola Ibrahim. What's your advice to the audience?
Yes, thank you, Ibukolua. Yes, I will just employ the listeners over there to actually take on most of this opportunity we discussed today to actually sign into one of the PAC products. If you don't have your will, just try and make sure that you contact us. We have our contact webinar so that you can reach out to us, sign us to Living Trust, sign us to, if you are in diaspora, sign on to individual diaspora. Like they used to say that past is a waste paper, past is a waste paper, present is newspaper, future is a question paper. So come out from your past, control your present, and secure your future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abimbola, for that advice. Right now, I can see we have lots of questions in the chat box already, and I'll hand over to Mary to handle the Q&A session.
Thank you, Bukola, for that. That's a very pleasant and educative one. Thank you once again. Now we are in the Q&A session, and in case you still have more questions or you have more clarifications, please kindly drop them in the comment section. The first question, which was asked and has already been answered by Mrs. Olatunde Komalafe. Then also onto the next question. Can a trust be created for oneself and not for a named beneficiary? If yes, will such assets under trust attached when there is a judgment debt against the person? Okay, let me read that again, please. Can a trust be created for oneself and not for a named beneficiary? That's one. If yes, will such assets under trust attached when there is a judgment debt against the person? Mr. Abimbola, please, would you like taking this question?
Okay, thank you. It's kind of a living trust we have been talking about. Yes, of course. You can actually create trust, a living trust around your asset. Of course, when there is a judgment debt, because Senior Balogun has already said earlier that in case whereby you have a living trust arrangement being created around your asset, some of the asset will be sealed, being not being accessible by the judgment debtors, I used to say. So, of course, that's one of the benefits of actually having a living trust and, create a living trust around your asset is a way to go. There's a lot of opportunity and advantages to that,
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Abimbala Ibrahim, for that quick answer and insightful one. I hope the audience in particular has gotten his answer from Mr. Abimbala's answer. So on to the next question. How can an alien, in this case, terminally sick parents, protect their children using a trust? Okay, Mr. Abimbala Ibrahim.
Yes, okay. Yeah, of course. It is always been advisable, because one of the reasons why will seems to be void is that you look at all those objectives, that actually make wills to be enforceable. You look at the capacity. Maybe that person have a mental capacity to actually create that will. One. Then you look at maybe that person is a sound mind. You look at maybe it's not under duress. You don't draft that will under duress. But I don't know the gravity of that ailment. But of course, you can advise the parent that actually, falling sick, but it has to be with his own wishes. It's not being forced to actually, have that kind of arrangement, so to say. But it's not as if maybe it's the mentor that will not be able to, have a sound mind at that period. If it's not, it's just this ailment is just minute, of course, you can actually prove that it's not really affect his sense of reasoning, as at the time is actually put on those arrangements, especially will. Of course, you can actually advise such person to actually write his or her will. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abimbala, for that. On to our next question. Please explain better on corporate trusts, the benefits, and how long can a trust last for? Mrs. Olatunde Komalafe, please, you have the floor.
Okay, so it would have been good to know what aspects of corporate trust you want better explanation on. Is it corporate bonds? Is it syndicated loans? Is it escrow trust services? Because these are all under corporate trusts. So what if you want me to run through everything, I could do that. I could do that. But essentially, corporate trusts, so corporate bonds under corporate, it just has to do with a company that come into the market to secure funds, capital market, issues a bond. It's a whole lot of process. Issues a bond, investors in the public subscribe to the bond. They purchase units. In that bond, and the trustee is responsible, the whole of the transaction from start to the end. So the public offer is there, funds coming to the company, for the use with which it was intended in the trust deed. And then in the process of time, the bond can be for 5 years. It can be for 5 years, depending on the type of instrument it is. It can be a 5-year bond. And depending on what the trust deed states or requires, the company is expected to make payments. It could be monthly payments into the sinking fund account. It could be making a lump payment into the sinking fund account on a particular date specified in the trust deed, towards the repayment of both coupon and principal to the bondholders. So that transaction runs for the number of years for which the bond has been set up, to run, and the trustee is responsible for ensuring that bondholders get their coupon payments, principal payments, depending on the structure of the bond, coupon plus principal or coupon and then principal later, ensures the bondholders get returns. They get their coupon payments, their principal repayments as at when due. Now the trustees coordinate, all the parties to the bond transaction. The registrars, the bond issuer itself, the bondholders. They coordinate all of those activities to ensure that the bond, the facility, is paid back as at when due. They also, of course, liaise with the Securities and Exchange Commission to get all the approvals required, to set up the bond issuance. So that is for the corporate bond. Syndicated loans, I think we've talked about that pretty much extensively. Where you have a borrower and several lenders in a transaction, and you have the trustee coming in, as the focal person, as the central person, coordinating all the activities surrounding that syndicated loan. All the documentation rests with the trustees, the titles, rests with the trustees, and they arrange, all of the transactions that has to do with that particular transaction till each of the lenders exits for corporates. And of course, it's also all of these services are regulated. They are regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Now, for escrow trust services, you have instances where maybe a company has gone into liquidation and a receivership is set up. Now, the assets of that company will gradually be liquidated. The shares, the properties, the movable and immovable, assets will be liquidated. An escrow account is opened in the custody of the trustees, and funds, from the liquidation of those assets, are, paid into the escrow account. Now, the escrow account, at the culmination of liquidation of all the assets, the trustees are responsible for distributing, the proceeds of the sale of the assets to the various lenders or beneficiaries, of the fund. So that is that in a nutshell. But just like Abimbola said, Ibukoluwa said, there'll be other sessions which we expect you to be a part of, so you can get more insight into all of these services. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Komalafe. That's a lot, and I'm very sure this person in particular have gotten more details. And as you have all heard, forget your past and secure your future. And until then, I'm handing over to Ibukoluwa. Ibukoluwa, thank you.
Thank you, Mary Shomori, for handling that Q&A session excellently. So we have come to the end of this session. And before we go, it is important to reiterate what our speakers have actually said from the beginning of this session till now. And as our speakers have said it is important to seek professional advice when you want to set up a trust. And asset protection is actually a way to shield our assets from risk and liabilities, as well as even taxes. So right now, we would like to say a big thank you to all our audience. So on behalf of PAC Trustees, we say big thank you to you all. I believe this session has actually been a valuable use of our time, and we've been able to understand how we can create a layer of protection to our assets. Having learned even how trustees play their role to ensure that these assets are managed and protected. And we would like to say a very big thank you to all our speakers who called and you answered us. And not only that, you have also shared from your wealth of experience with us, and we have been able to get a whole lot from this session. So I would like everyone to drop in the chat box how much they enjoyed the session. Tell us how you felt from what you have learned from this session. So at this point, we would like to say a big thank you to everyone. And should you need any of our services, you can reach out to us through our website or through our email at info@pac.com, and also through our contact line. You can also subscribe directly to any of our services, just like the different vehicles we mentioned, Children Education Trust, Diaspora Trust. You can Google PAC Trustees Portal. The link to our website and the portal has been shared on the chat box. You can pick it up from there. So thank you very much, everyone. And at this point, we'd like to say good afternoon, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon and a blessed week ahead. Thank you and bye for now.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely week. Bye.